on the trail of the midnight sun. Chapter 1. The Call to Adventure. In the dimming glow of a San Francisco jazz club, where the night forever clung to the edges of a saxophone wail, Gil, Jean, and Lily found themselves perched on the cusp of restlessness. The air was thick with smoke and rebellion, and the beat, oh, the beat was a living thing, a wild pulse that throbbed in their veins. Jean, electric with feverish energy, drummed the table, matching the rhythm of the jazz band hammering out liberation songs. "Man, we're too young to sit still," he declared, eyes sparkling like the road under headlights. Out there's a symphony playing just for us, and we're missing it." Lily, draped in a shawl that caught the low light, her eyes smoky and dreamlike, swayed slightly. "It's like the universe is penning an invitation in the stars," she mused. Her voice a melody that danced with the trumpet's cry. Gil, caught in the fervour of his friends and the magic of his own unfolding thoughts, scribbled furiously in his battered notebook. Each word he wrote was a step away from the mundane, a leap into the vast unknown. "Let's chase the midnight sun," he proposed, his voice a blend of challenge and charm. "Let's drive until the map turns to mystery, where the day forgets to end." The idea struck them like lightning, fierce and illuminating. Jean slapped the table, setting their glasses clinking. "Yes," he exclaimed. "Let's go north, past the edge of what we know, past the boundaries of these city lights into the heart of the raw, wild world." Their laughter mingled with the music, creating a moment so perfect that the very night seemed to pause in its turning. They plotted their departure with the eagerness of souls starved for horizons. They would leave at dawn, when the first shy rays crept over the city while the world was still blurred with dreams. As night deepened into the early hours of indigo and cool air, they gathered their meagre funds, coins and crumpled bills tossed carelessly into the pot of their ambitions. Maps sprawled across the table, lines and routes marked in the enthusiastic, shaky hands of those about to embark on a quest. They packed lightly, only the essentials bound in backpacks and duffel bags. Cameras for capturing fleeting shadows, notebooks for trapping the poetry of the road, and a box of tapes filled with the best of rock and roll, their soundtrack for adventure. And as dawn broke, painting the sky with strokes of pink and gold, they piled into Jean's Cadillac, a beast of chrome and promises. It was more than a car. It was a chariot for their exodus from the ordinary. With a roar of the engine and a cheer from their throats, they left behind the sleeping city. The road stretched out before them like a ribbon of possibility, winding through landscapes that promised to both challenge and change them. The journey lay ahead, unwritten, a story waiting to be told through tire tracks and boot prints, through whispered secrets and shouted songs. And so they drove, with the windows down and the music up, chasing the ever-receding line where the sky meets the earth, chasing the sun that refused to set, a band of travellers bound by the simple. Powerful need to feel alive in a world that was impossibly, beautifully vast. Chapter 2. The Journey Begins. As the old Cadillac, scarred and proud, hurtled away from the vanishing skyline of San Francisco, the trio felt as if they were shedding invisible chains. The dawn was a fresh canvas, and they were the brushes dipped in the vibrant hues of possibility. Each mile they covered was a line in their unfolding epic, the road unspooling like a ribbon through the awakening world. Jean, whose hands were as much a part of the wheel as the leather that bound it, drove with a wild grace. His eyes, mirrors of the restless spirit within, watched the road unfold with a voracious appetite. "This, my friends, is pure freedom," he declared, the wind whipping through his hair, turning his voice into a part of the rushing air. Lily, nestled among a nest of maps and scribbled pages, hummed softly to herself, a private melody that danced with the hum of the tires. Her journal lay open on her lap, a pen poised in her hand, ready to capture the whirlwind of moments, the mosaic of the journey. Gil, ever the observer, let his gaze wander over the landscapes that swept by their windows. His mind, a fertile ground for the seeds of thought, sprouted poems and stories with every passing mile. He spoke aloud, not always sure if his words were meant for his companions or for the air itself. Look at that horizon, a line drawn by some unseen hand, daring us to cross it, to redefine it as our own. What lies beyond? Cities, forests, mountains, each one a new chapter, each bend in the road a plot twist. The car became a vessel not just of flesh and bone, but of dreams and revelations. As they passed through small towns, each one a snapshot of Americana, they saw faces that carried stories untold. Lives unfolding in parallel universes of routine and quiet rebellion. In a diner in a sleepy Nevada town, they stopped for coffee and pie. The waitress, a woman with laugh lines etched deeply around her eyes, poured them steaming cups of joe with a motherly affection. "Where you kids headed?" she asked, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd seen many travelers pass through. "To the ends of the earth," Gene replied, his smile infectious. "Well, make sure you take some of this pie with you. You'll need the sugar to get there," she laughed, slicing through the deep red cherry filling. Back on the road, they encountered landscapes that shifted like scenes from a movie reel. The mountains of California gave way to the arid deserts of Nevada and then to the vast, open plains of Oregon. Each environment was a different backdrop against which they played out their small, significant dramas. One night, under a blanket of stars so dense it felt like they could wrap themselves in it, they camped by the side of the road. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and cold earth. Around a small fire they shared stories, tales of what they had left behind and dreams of what lay ahead. Gene spoke of a life unbound by convention, his words tinged with a philosopher's passion. Lily shared her hopes of capturing something truly great in her writing, something that could touch the soul of the world. Gil, quieter but no less intense, talked about finding the truth in simplicity, the poetry in the everyday. As they spoke, the fire crackled, a punctuation to their aspirations, the flames casting their faces in a dance of light and shadow. The world around them was vast, and they were small within it, but their spirits were uncontainable, stretching out into the night, touching the stars. When they packed up the next morning, the sun was just a promise on the horizon. They climbed into their Cadillac, the seats cold with the morning chill, and set off again, chasing the dawn that raced ever before them. Chapter 3: Encounters and Escapades. The road is a beast of many faces, and as the trio drove deeper into the heart of America, it revealed its varied visage. Each town was a story, every roadside stop a stanza in their ongoing poem of discovery. Gene, with his insatiable thirst for life, drove them not only across the physical terrain, but through a landscape of human connection and wild happenstance. In a little town on the edge of Idaho, they stumbled upon a festival celebrating the harvest. The streets were alive with music, the air thick with the aroma of roasting corn and sweet pies. Gene, ever the catalyst for revelry, pulled the car over, and before Gil or Lily could protest, they were swept up in the festivities. They danced with strangers, young and old, their bodies moving to the rhythmic beating of drums and the lilting melody of folk songs. Lily, with flowers in her hair handed to her by giggling children, spun under the starry sky, her laughter a melody that matched the music's joy. Gil, notebook forgotten in the back pocket of his jeans, found himself entranced by an old storyteller who sat by the fire, his voice a deep timbre that seemed to echo with the wisdom of the earth. "Every man's life is a myth of his own making," the old man said, his eyes reflecting the flames. Gil listened, captivated, the words fueling his own burgeoning philosophy. Meanwhile, Jean flirted and charmed, his bright energy attracting a crowd of admirers. But even amidst the flirtation, his eyes were alight with a deeper fire, the joy of a man who finds himself exactly where he needs to be. As they left the festival, the car laden with homemade jams and a fresh pie, the mood was euphoric. The night was a canvas, and they painted it with their joys and newfound friendships. The road led them next across the great plains of Montana. Here, the world seemed to open up, the sky a vast dome stretching endlessly above. They drove in silence, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the landscape. It was during these quiet moments that the depth of their journey sank in, each lost in their own thoughts, yet connected by the shared experience. Their next encounter came unexpectedly when their car, weary from the journey, began to cough and sputter, finally giving out on a lonely stretch of road. As they stood contemplating their fate, a pickup truck pulled over, driven by a woman with a smile as wide as the horizon. Her name was Annie, a mechanic who lived nearby, and with a laugh and a shake of her head she towed them to her workshop. While Annie worked on the car, her husband cooked them a meal, and their children showed Gil and Lily around the farm. Jean, curious and ever eager to learn, watched Annie work, his hands itching to help. "You kids are a long way from home," Annie said, as she tightened a bolt. "What drives you to chase the sun?" "It's not just the sun," Jean replied, his gaze thoughtful. "It's about finding something true, something raw and real." Annie nodded, her expression understanding. "You may not find all your answers on the road, but it's a good place to start." They stayed with Annie and her family for 2 days, helping around the farm in exchange for the hospitality. When they left, it was with heavy hearts but lifted spirits, the Cadillac purring like a kitten, thanks to Annie's skilled hands. As they crossed into the wild expanses of Alaska, the final leg of their journey, the landscape shifted dramatically. The mountains rose majestic and daunting, the forests dense and whispering secrets of the ages. Here the midnight sun awaited them, the culmination of their quest. They camped by a lake, surrounded by the untouched wilderness, and as they sat by the fire, the sky above them alive with the hues of twilight that lingered. They shared their dreams and fears. "This," Gil said, gesturing to the enveloping night, "is what I was writing about. But I never knew it until now." Lily, her eyes on the flickering flames, smiled softly. "We've found our story, haven't we?" And Jean, who had driven every mile with a relentless drive, simply leaned back and watched the sky, a satisfied grin on his face. The road had brought them here, to this moment of quiet understanding and profound connection. Tomorrow they would see the midnight sun, but tonight they basked in the glow of their shared journey, a testament to the wild, beating heart of the world and of themselves. Chapter 4. The Heart of the Journey. As their journey propelled them deeper into the wild embrace of the north, the days stretched longer, blending into each other under the surreal glow of a sun that refused to set. The landscape around them grew more rugged, more remote, each mile unraveling new layers of their own selves they hadn't known or had chosen to ignore. In the vast wilderness of the Yukon, they paused for a few days in a small village where the river ran like a silver thread through the heart of ancient pines. The locals, a hardy, close-knit group, welcomed them with a cautious warmth born of isolation. Jean, ever the spark plug, soon had them laughing and sharing stories around a roaring bonfire, their faces flickering in the firelight. Lily found herself drawn to an old woman named Nora, who wove tales as she wove blankets, colourful, intricate, and full of history. "These threads are like the days of our lives," Nora told her, her gnarled fingers nimbly dancing over the loom. "Each one alone is thin, fragile, but together they create something strong, something lasting." The metaphor struck a chord with Lily, who saw her own story as a thread in the broader tapestry of the journey, intertwined with those of Gil and Jean. Gil, meanwhile, spent hours wandering the edges of the village, notebook in hand, captivated by the stark beauty of the land. He wrote of the whispering woods, the laughter of the river, the stoic mountains, each word a brushstroke in his portrait of the journey. One evening, as the sun hovered just at the edge of the world, he penned a poem about the endless twilight, about the way light lingered as if the day itself was loath to end. Their time in the village taught them about resilience, about the strength required to live in harmony with such unforgiving beauty. It was here, amidst the tales and the tundra, that they each faced the quiet truths of their own hearts. As they ventured further, the road took them into Alaska, where the landscape shifted from breathtaking to otherworldly. The mountains soared into the sky, white-capped and majestic, guarding the land like ancient sentinels. The forests were dense and dark, full of secrets and whispers of old spirits. This was a place that demanded respect, a place that taught you your insignificance in the grand scheme of nature. They camped by a lake one night, the water a perfect mirror reflecting the endless sky. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and cold stone, and as they gathered around the fire, a deeper conversation unfolded, one that delved into the essence of their journey. Jean, the firelight playing across his animated face, spoke of freedom, not just the physical freedom of the road, but the freedom from inner demons, from the chains we forge ourselves. "Out here," he gestured expansively, "your real self can't hide. It's just you and the wild, and the truth comes out whether you're ready for it or not." Lily shared her fears, her voice soft but steady. "I was scared," she confessed, "scared of finding out that the person I thought I was isn't who I am." Her honesty opened a floodgate, and for a moment the vulnerability hung heavy in the air. Gil, listening intently, finally spoke. "This journey, it's peeled back layers of who we thought we were, layers of societal paint we didn't even know we were covered in. Out here we're raw, we're real. And that's terrifying and beautiful all at once." As they shared their thoughts and fears, the bond between them deepened, forged in the fires of their revelations. They were no longer just friends on a road trip, they were fellow travellers on a spiritual quest, each seeking answers to different questions, but all on the same path. In the days that followed, as they moved closer to their goal, the land where the sun never set, they found themselves more reflective, more attuned to the subtle shifts within themselves and each other. The midnight sun, a phenomenon they had chased as a physical destination, began to symbolize something more, an endless light that mirrored their own inner journeys, illuminating the darkest corners of their souls. When they finally reached the Arctic Circle, the sight of the sun, a golden orb suspended in a sky that refused to darken, was almost anticlimactic in its quiet beauty. They stood together in silence, watching the horizon where the sky and the earth shared a secret smile. And in that moment, under the midnight sun, they understood that the journey was not about outrunning the night. It was about embracing the light within, about understanding that no darkness was too deep to overcome. As they set up camp, the landscape bathed in the ethereal glow of a sun that knew no end. Their conversations lingered on the philosophical, on the existential. They discussed the poetry of endless daylight, the metaphor of a sun that never set, and what it meant in the context of their own lives. Gill wrote in his notebook, his words a quiet reflection of their collective epiphany. In the land of the midnight sun, we discovered not just the light outside, but the light within. And in its glow we found not answers, but better questions. Chapter 5. Reaching the Destination. The road to the Arctic was both arduous and astonishing, winding through landscapes that seemed to defy the imagination. With each mile northward, the air grew colder, the light more ethereal, as if they were driving into another realm. The vast expanses of Alaska unfolded before them, a land where nature ruled supreme and humanity held only a tentative grasp. As they approached their destination, the anticipation that had been building throughout their journey reached its peak. The concept of reaching the land of the midnight sun, the mythical perpetual daylight, had driven them onward through fatigue and uncertainty. Now, as the reality of achieving their goal drew near, a mix of exhilaration and introspection settled over the trio. Gill, whose pen had been his constant companion, found himself struggling to articulate the emotions that surged through him. The notebook that had been filled with continuous streams of thoughts and observations throughout their journey now lay open on his lap, the pen hovering above the blank page. "How do you capture infinity?" he murmured to himself, watching the landscape blaze with the unsinking sun. Lily, who had always had an affinity for the spiritual aspects of their adventures, sensed a deep connection to the land as they drove through the endless day. "It feels like we're driving into forever," she said, her voice filled with wonder. She had documented their journey in drawings and poems, her work now taking on a new intensity as the sun refused to set, bathing everything in a surreal golden light. Jean, ever the driver and the spirit of their journey, kept his eyes on the road, but his mind on the significance of their quest. "We chased the sun and we caught it," he declared, his voice tinged with triumph and a hint of incredulity. "What do we do with it now?" Their destination was a small coastal town where the Arctic Ocean met the rugged shores of northern Alaska. The community was a sparse collection of buildings, hardy structures that clung to the edge of the world. The locals, few in number, were a mixture of native peoples and hardy souls who had come to find solitude or escape at the edge of the earth. The trio was greeted with a reserved curiosity. The residents, accustomed to the occasional wanderer, drawn by the lure of the midnight sun. An elder of the community, a woman with a face as weathered as the coastal cliffs, invited them to a gathering by the shore to celebrate the solstice, the time when the sun reached its highest, most lingering arc in the sky. As they joined the small assembly of people by the water, the reality of their journey's end settled around them like a cloak. The sun, a relentless orb, hung low and vibrant over the horizon, casting long, surreal shadows across the landscape. The ocean reflected its light, a vast mirror that doubled the spectacle. The elder spoke of the sun's significance, her voice carrying over the wind and waves. "It is a giver of life and a watcher of the world," she explained. "It sees all, travels everywhere, but here it pauses to rest, to watch us, to remind us of the cycles of life." Gil listened intently, finally finding the words he had been searching for. He scribbled in his notebook, capturing the essence of what this journey had meant. "We travelled to the ends of the earth to find the sun, only to discover that what we were really searching for was a way to see our lives in its unending light." As the celebration continued, with music and stories shared around a crackling fire, the trio felt a profound connection to this place and its people who thrived under the constant gaze of the sun. They shared their own stories, their reasons for chasing this celestial phenomenon, finding common threads with the lives of those who called this remote corner of the world home. Finally, as the celebration wound down and the community members drifted away, Gil, Jean and Lily stood by the shore, watching the midnight sun hover over the ocean. There was no dramatic conclusion, no definitive closure to their journey, only the quiet acknowledgement that this was a turning point. "The sun doesn't really set," Jean said, his voice soft, reflective. "It just moves on. Maybe that's what we should do too," Lily nodded, her eyes lingering on the horizon. "We came all this way to find something spectacular, and we found it. But maybe the most spectacular part is just being here, being present in this unending day." Gil closed his notebook, his writings a testament to their journey, a narrative that had started with a chase and ended with a realization. "The journey doesn't end here," he said, his eyes meeting those of his friends. "It just changes. It goes wherever we go, carrying a piece of this sun, this day, with us." They camped there by the shore, under the watchful eye of the midnight sun. Their spirits alight with the knowledge that every ending was just a new beginning. The road back would be long, but they knew now that the journey was never really about reaching a place on a map. It was about discovering the paths within themselves, illuminated by the endless light of the Arctic sun. In the morning they would pack up and turn the Cadillac southward, heading home but carrying with them the light of the north, a light that would forever guide their way forward, no matter where their roads took them. Epilogue. The road continues. As the trio turned their Cadillac southward, leaving the eternal daylight of the Arctic behind, the journey felt far from over. The road stretched out before them, familiar yet transformed, much like they were. The endless horizon beckoned not as a boundary to be reached, but as a promise of continual discovery. Gil, whose notebook had swelled with the stories and revelations of the road, found himself often glancing back through the pages. Each entry, each sketch, and scribbled line traced the path of their transformation. "The road," he wrote on the first page of a new notebook, "isn't a place but a perpetual state of becoming." Jean drove with a thoughtful calmness that was new, a reflection of the deeper understanding he had gained. The wild, restless energy that had propelled him north was now tempered by a profound appreciation for the journey itself. "What lies ahead," he mused aloud, "is just as important as what we've travelled through. The road doesn't end, it just keeps unfolding." Lily, her spirit enriched with countless new poems and drawings, shared her creations with the world online, connecting with others who were inspired by the promise of the road. Her art captured the essence of their journey, a fusion of light and shadow, motion and stillness.
Each piece, she explained in a post, is a fragment of the road, a moment of light captured forever.
As they crossed back into familiar territories, the landscapes greeting them like old friends, they found comfort in the known but saw it with new eyes. Every tree, every bend in the river seemed to hold a deeper meaning, a reminder of the vastness they had experienced and the intimacy of their shared journey. They made stops, not as tourists, but as storytellers, sharing their experiences in cafes, at campgrounds, and in small town squares. People gathered to listen, drawn by the allure of the midnight sun tales and the palpable bond of friendship that the trio exuded. Their stories sparked curiosity, inspired others to seek their own adventures, to find their own paths illuminated by whatever sun they chased. Upon returning to San Francisco, the city's familiar fog greeted them like a soft grey curtain, pulling back to reveal the stage of their everyday lives. But they returned, not as the people who had left, wide-eyed dreamers looking for a light in the darkness. They returned as carriers of their own light, radiant with the glow of all they had seen and learned. The Cadillac, once just a car, now stood as a symbol of their journey, parked once more beneath the apartment they shared. They unpacked slowly, reluctantly, each item a memory, each memory a step along the way. In the days that followed, as they reintegrated into their routines, they found moments to meet, to talk, to reflect on their journey. The road continued, not just as a memory, but as a presence that informed their every decision, their every dream. Gil continued to write his next project, a book titled The Road Continues, a narrative woven from their experiences. Jean took to organizing road trips for others, guiding new travelers along the paths he had come to know and love. Lily held exhibitions of her art, each piece a window into the soul of the journey they had shared. The road continued in the stories they told, the lives they touched, and the quiet moments when the sun set and they found themselves looking northward, hearts full of the midnight sun, minds wandering the endless day. The road never ended. It was a loop, a spiral, a meandering path that promised more turns, more discoveries, more roads to travel. And so the journey continued, within and without, as infinite as the sun that never set, as enduring as the road that always beckoned.